So let's get right into this. Picture it. The year is 1816. All around the world, the sky goes dark. It's a weird, lingering twilight that just won't go away. Summer never shows up, crops are failing everywhere, and people are genuinely whispering that this might be the end of the world. But you know what? This wasn't superstition. This was real, and it was all because of one single, massive event on the other side of the planet.
It really sounds like the start of a bizarre riddle, doesn't it? I mean, a classic horror monster, a piece of tech that changed how we get around, and a worldwide food crisis. What could they possibly have in common? Well, the answer ties all three of them back to that one dark year. It's an incredible story about how one event can set off the most unexpected chain reactions you can imagine. All right, so our story doesn't start with a whisper. It starts with a bang. A really, really big one. We have to go to the epicenter of it all. A single, colossal explosion that was so powerful, its sound traveled for thousands of kilometers, and its effects would ripple across the entire globe for years to come. So on this day, on an island in Indonesia, Mount Tambora didn't just erupt, it unleashed a fury unlike anything in modern memory. The first blast was absolutely devastating, for sure, but that was just the start of a multi-day explosion that would literally tear the mountain apart, and with it, the world's climate. The scale of this is it's hard to wrap your head around. The eruption blasted 150 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and dust straight up into the atmosphere. To give you a little perspective on that, that's enough stuff to cover an area the size of Great Britain in a layer of dust almost 2 feet thick. Just wow. And let's be super clear here. This wasn't just another big eruption. On the scale they used to measure these things, Tambora was a super colossal event. It is still the largest and most powerful volcanic eruption in all of recorded history. It totally dwarfs the eruption of Krakatoa, which is probably the one you've actually heard of.
For the people nearby, the impact was immediate and apocalyptic. I mean, for weeks, the sun was just gone, totally blotted out by this thick blanket of ash. An eyewitness hundreds of kilometers away wrote that even when a few rays of sun managed to break through, it was like looking through a dense fog, a terrifying preview of what was about to happen to the rest of the world.
Okay, so here's how a local disaster went global. That enormous cloud of ash didn't just fall back down. The tiniest, finest particles were shot way, way up into the stratosphere, and that's where they started their slow, ominous journey around the entire planet. And this is the key to the whole thing, a phenomenon called a volcanic winter. Basically, all those tiny particles act like a giant sunshade for the planet. They reflect sunlight back into space before it can warm the Earth. Global temperatures dropped by what sounds like a little, about ½ degree Celsius, but trust me, that was more than enough to throw the world's weather into absolute chaos. So what did this chaos actually look like? Well, in May, a killer frost wiped out crops all across New England. In June, people were waking up to snow in New York. By July, even the famous author Jane Austen, over in England, was writing about how she thought it would never be warm again. And then, get this, in August, there were reports of frost as far south as Virginia. There was just no escape. Now you have to remember, people back then had no idea why this was happening. All they knew is that the normal summer they were expecting was replaced by something alien. There was this weird, permanent, dry fog that just hung in the air. It dimmed the sun and gave it this bizarre reddish color. It was said you could see sunspots with the naked eye. So eerie. And this wasn't just some weird weather phenomenon to talk about. No, this was an absolute humanitarian catastrophe. A year of cold and dark led directly to a year of hunger and death on a massive, massive scale. You can really feel the suffering just by looking at the nicknames people gave this year. In America, it was called 1800 and froze to death. Over in Germany, they called it the Year of the Beggar. Each one of these names is like a little scar, a testament to the hardship that was etched into the memory of an entire generation. So, with harvests failing all across the Northern Hemisphere, food prices went through the roof. People were starving. In Europe, which was already fragile after years of war, that desperation just boiled over into food riots. People were looting bakeries, grain markets became scenes of violence. It was a genuine crisis of survival. And right behind famine came disease. In Ireland alone, the food shortages led to a devastating typhus epidemic. The estimated death toll from just that one outbreak was 100,000 people. 100,000 deaths, all because a volcano had erupted on the other side of the world. It's just staggering.
But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Because out of all this darkness and despair came one of the most unexpected and honestly enduring creative sparks in history. While so many people were just trying to survive, a small group of writers actually found inspiration in all the gloom.
So, picture this, a fancy villa on the shore of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. A group of famous young writers, we're talking Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley, they all went there for a summer vacation. But instead of sunshine, they got trapped indoors by what they called a wet, ungenial summer of endless cold and rain.
So, they're stuck inside. The world outside feels like it's ending, and they're bored. So what do? They start telling ghost stories. Lord Byron suggests a challenge. Who can come up with the most terrifying tale? And the results were legendary. From that one challenge, we got two of the most iconic monsters in history. Mary Shelley's tragic creation, Frankenstein, and the story that created the blueprint for the modern vampire.
You can just feel the atmosphere of 1816 in the things they wrote. Lord Byron wrote a whole poem called Darkness, which is a direct response to that eerie twilight he was living through. It's this vision of a sunless, dying world, just a perfect, chilling echo of what people were actually experiencing.
But the story doesn't end there. The impact of Tambora went way beyond famine and fiction. The crisis it created actually sent out these ripples that led to some incredible innovations and literally reshaped the map for entire nations.
And this connection is one of my absolute favorites. So, no crops meant no oats to feed horses, which were the main way to get around. Horses became super expensive to keep, or they just starved. This transportation crisis inspired a German inventor named Karl Dreis to create a machine you could power yourself. He called it the Draisine, and it was the direct ancestor of the bicycle we all know today. Isn't that wild?
Meanwhile, back in America, that farming disaster in the Northeast basically forced thousands of families to just give up and abandon their farms. They packed up and headed west, looking for better soil and a more reliable climate in places like the Ohio Valley. And this mass migration became a huge driver of the westward expansion that would define America in the 19th century.
And how do we know all this for sure? Well, part of the answer is actually written in nature's own filing cabinet. Scientists who study ancient trees can literally see the impact of that cold, dark year. The tree rings from 1816 show stunted growth. It's like a visible scar that confirms all the historical accounts. It's an amazing physical record of this climate catastrophe. When you step back and look at it, the eruption of Mount Tambora was so much more than a weather event. It was a turning point in history. A single geological event on one side of the planet triggered a global famine, gave us timeless literary monsters, sparked the invention of the bicycle, and pushed a nation to expand westward. It is just such a powerful reminder of how connected everything on our planet really is.
And that kind of leaves you with one final thought, right? 200 years ago, a force of nature that nobody really understood reshaped the world in ways no one could have ever predicted. It really makes you wonder, what are the invisible forces, the Tamboras of our own time, that are quietly setting our future in motion right now?